All right, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for this evening's webinar presentation. If you've just joined us, thank you again for joining us. My name is Leticia Preciado, and I'm the Parent Engagement Coordinator here in Pittsburgh Unified School District. Joining me this evening is Dr. Tracy Cataldi and Michelle Ong, who will be doing this evening's presentation. Si está buscando la presentación esta tarde en español, sí tenemos traducción disponible. Simplemente seleccione en la parte de abajo de su pantalla donde dice interpretación y luego seleccione el idioma de español. So we'll be starting momentarily. Thank you again for joining us this evening for our presentation on managing anxiety and fears. Muchas gracias por asistir esta tarde para nuestro taller sobre manejando la ansiedad y los miedos. Si está buscando la traducción en español, por favor seleccione en la parte de su pantalla donde dice interpretación y luego seleccione español. All right, throughout this evening, we are in a webinar style format, so you can see us, but we cannot see you, but you will have an opportunity to pose your questions using the Q&A. And you can also post any comments in the chat as well. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout this evening's presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome Dr. Cataldi and Michelle Ong, who will be doing this evening's presentation. Welcome.
Hello, good evening and welcome. I am Tracy Cataldi, the coordinator for social emotional supports in the Pittsburgh Unified School District. And thank you so much, Leticia and Gabby, for making this happen. And thank you to Michelle, who is our superstar presenter this evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Michelle. Let you introduce yourself and take it away.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Michelle Ong, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and the school-based mental health therapist for Pittsburgh Unified. So I'm excited tonight to be talking with you all about addressing anxiety and fears and exploring strategies to manage those feelings when facing uncertain times. Okay, so I'm going to pull up on my screen the presentation now, and then Tracy, I'm going to have you just kind of be my point person for any comments or questions that might arise as I share this presentation.
You got it.
Okay, can everyone see the screen? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Okay. So during this presentation today, we are going to go over understanding anxiety and fear, and including in identifying sources of anxiety and how it can look. We are going to be exploring and practicing strategies to support your child when they experience anxiety and fear, as well as discuss strategies to help you manage your own responses when facing those emotions. In addition, we'll talk about ways to manage your own self-care to be able to show up and be present for yourself and your family. If there are any questions, as Leticia had mentioned, please feel free to use the chat to ask them or the Q&A function. I'll do my best to stay on top of it, but again, please, Tracy and Leticia, if you could just help me out and point out anything that I might be missing.
Will do.
Before we dive in, I am curious about the ages of the kids of the parents in this space right now so that I can keep in mind any notes that might be relevant for those age groups. Could I get a sense, and you can type into the chat, how old your children are? And then as these responses come in, Tracy, could you call out some of the responses that are being said?
Sure. 12, 8, 10, 17, 11.
Okay, great. I got a good age range group right here. And so I'll keep that in mind as I continue this presentation as well. Okay, so we are going to start off with a warm-up activity just to kind of get us all in the mindset of addressing and talking about anxiety and fears. So I want you all to take a moment to think about a time when you felt anxious or fearful and you were able to find a way to manage your reactions and feelings to be able to overcome the situation. So I'm just going to give you a moment to kind of think of that situation, think about, what was going on, how it felt, and how you were able to manage your reactions and feelings. And as you're kind of coming up with this example in your head, I want you to try to complete this sentence and you can type your response into the chat. So to fill out the rest of the sentence, one of the best things I can do for myself when I feel anxious is, and fill in that blank, and you can type it into the chat. And so for myself, when I'm thinking of this answer, one of the best things I can do for myself when I feel anxious is kind of grounding myself into the present moment and kind of connecting myself to what's going on right in front of me. Were there any responses in the chat,
So
Tracy?
some of the remind myself that it's not going to be forever, to
That's a good
breathe
one.
and to say positive affirmations.
Yeah, those are great ones. And so I want you to keep these responses in mind, even if you didn't put them in the chat, as we can all see, you all already have your own toolbox of strategies to manage your own anxieties. And so we'll come back to these answers in just a little bit. All right, so we are going to begin with talking about what is anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, and uneasiness that can physically look like increased blood pressure, sweating, and a rapid heartbeat. All emotions provide us with information about what is going on around us, and anxiety's job is really to alert us of any potential danger and to keep us safe. And technically, the actual situation is not what's stressful, it's our perception about the what's going on that makes it stressful. So our perceptions can either be true or false, and when anxiety becomes too overwhelming, these thoughts can be hard to control. What I do want to note is that anxiety is a normal part of childhood and adolescence. However, it can sometimes grow, whether due to a specific situational factor or a generalized sense of fear. And part of our time together today is to learn about strategies to support your child in managing and tolerating these emotions. Okay, now going to this next slide here. Anxiety can come in different forms and be called different names. Some of these can include nervous, worried, scared, concerned, stressed, unsafe, overwhelmed, and these are just to name a few. What is common about all of these emotional states is that they all have a focus on possible danger at their core. So for the purpose of our time together, you might hear me kind of refer to these emotions using some of these common names or common ways that we can refer to them as. What I do want to note here, though, is that danger doesn't always have to look like a bear chasing us down the street. It can also be the danger of being rejected, the danger of losing something that we care about, or even the danger of being viewed in a certain way. On the sidebar of this slide right here, we can see some common sources of anxiety for kids and teens. So some things like questions like, what happens after I graduate from high school? To social relationships. For example, what if my friend doesn't like what I said to them? Or what if my friend doesn't like what I'm wearing today? From grades to starting a first job, family changes like divorce, moving to another city, another state, new siblings, how they're performing in school, or even doing a school presentation in front of a whole group of people. And something that's been more relevant right now has been the presidential election. And so what might this anxiety and fear look like in your child or teen? Some of the common signs can look like changes in difficulty concentrating, constant worries about routine aspects of their life. So this can look like constant questions of when you'll be home at the end of the day, or what time that they'll be picked up from practice. This can also look like withdrawal from friends or activities that they used to enjoy, some irritability or lashing out at others, difficulty in school or sudden poor performance from what they used to perform as, refusal to go to school, sleep problems, and this can look like having a hard time falling asleep, having a hard time staying asleep, or not wanting to wake up in the mornings. Substance use, constantly seeking reassurance. So this can look like asking or them asking questions like, is that okay with you? Is that all right? Frequent periods of crying and complaining often about not feeling well. So this can look from things like headaches to stomach aches to overall body aches. One of the things that I want to note here is that you know your child best, and I encourage you to listen to any gut feeling that you're noticing or experiencing as you're like noticing how your child's responding to things. That something may be off because you may be able to catch the anxiety before it becomes a bigger issue. Okay, so now that we kind of talked a little bit about what anxiety is, how it can show up, what are some common symptoms and common triggers for some of the anxiety, we're going to get into some of the strategies to respond and manage feelings of anxiety. I'm going to be going over 4 tips today that can help manage anxiety, and within each tip, there will be some practice activities and handouts that you can use outside of our webinar today. Okay, so starting with tip number 1, helping your child manage their anxiety. So what I want to be able to focus on here is how we're able to manage our child or teen's anxiety through our own responses. I have listed some notes here on this slide that may seem kind of obvious or intuitive, but sometimes are easier said than done. So I'm going to talk a little bit through them each individually and kind of give a quick example after this slide. The first one is talking to your child about their worries. So this can look like naming what you're seeing in your child from the list of what anxiety can look like from that previous slide we just saw. So saying things like, oh, I'm noticing that you have been having a lot of trouble sleeping, or I'm noticing that you're not wanting to hang out or talk with your friends as much. What's going on there? Being open about talking about anxiety and all other emotions for that matter shows that you are comfortable talking about these emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones, and that it's okay to talk about them. Sometimes, especially with those uncomfortable feelings, it can make a child or a teen just want to like hide away and just avoid them and not talk about them. So being able to open up that door and start that conversation can be a way to send the message that you are okay and you can handle their emotions. Also, listening to what your kid or your child or teen are telling you about and using their words and questions as a launching point for starting a conversation. So, it could even be like as you're driving in the car, they just bring up a random thought about, you know, having a homework assignment. And that can be a great launching point to ask a couple more curious questions or dive a little deeper about what is going on because there's something about that homework assignment that's on their mind. Showing concern and understanding. So what I mean by this is that while you may not view the situation as scary or stressful, it's your child's reality and it's true for them. So kind of meeting them where they're at and understanding it from their point of view. Being supportive but not controlling. Oftentimes, we can see our kids or teens hurting, and we want to step in and fix the situation to make the uncomfortable feelings go away and to make them feel better as quickly as possible. And when we step in, it can sometimes send the message that uncomfortable feelings have to be fixed, or it's not allowing them to have the experience of tolerating these uncomfortable feelings and managing their own emotional reactions. So when we're thinking about this, what we can do is support them in building their own toolbox of coping skills. And we're going to get into some of those tools in just a few slides. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share a clip from the movie Inside Out that demonstrates two different approaches to supporting someone. And in this case, it is someone who is feeling sad. So I have the same clip both in English and Spanish. So I'm going to play them back to back before kind of going over some of these reflection questions. So sit back and I'm going to start the first clip here. Okay, I did want to pause here. Can everyone hear the video?
No.
Okay. Let's see. I know that there is a function to be able to share the sound too.
Should be on the
Okay.
speaker.
Yep, I'm going to test it out right now.
Okay. There you go.
Oh,
Okay.
the Stuffed Animal Hall of Fame! My rocket! Wait, Riley and I were still using that rocket. It still has some song power left. Who's your friend who likes to play? No! No, you can't take my rocket to the top! Riley and I are going to the moon! Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time. We had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
How did you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey! There's the train!
All right, I'm going to pause that one and play the Spanish version.
El mundo de las princesas. Oh no, el salón de la fama del peluche. Mi cohete. Esperen, Riley y yo aún la estamos usando. Todavía tiene un poco de energía. ¿Quién es ese amigo ideal? ¡No! ¡No! ¡Riley! ¡No iremos a la luna! ¡No lo arrojes! todavía no me olvida.
Oye, todo estará bien. Tiene remedio. En cuanto regresemos al cuartel general, ¿dónde está la estación del tren?
Tenía todo el viaje planeado para los dos.
¡Hey! ¿Te gustan las cosquillas, eh? Es el monstruo y aquí viene. Oye, Bing Bong, mira esto. Oh, yo me sé un juego. Tú apuntas a la estación del tren y todos corremos hacia ella. ¿No suena divertido? ¡Rápido! ¡Todos a la estación!
Lamento que desecharan tu cohete. Es algo que para ti tenía valor. Y se ha ido. Para siempre.
Tristeza, lo vas a empeorar.
Lo siento.
Es lo único que tenía de Riley.
Apuesto que gozaron grandes aventuras.
Oh, fueron maravillosas. Un día volvimos en el tiempo. Desayunamos 2 veces ese día.
Tristeza.
Suena asombroso. Apuesto a que le gustó.
Le encantó. Fuimos mejores amigos.
Sí, es triste.
Ah,
Ya me siento bien. Síganme. La estación está de este lado.
¿cómo hiciste eso?
Pues no lo sé, se sentía triste, así que escuché lo que...
¡Miren! ¡Es el tren!
All right. So taking a look at this clip, what did you all notice about the approach of joy versus sadness in responding to Bing Bong? You can put your answers in the chat.
Michelle, there was a couple comments in the chat. 2 people stated that they could not hear it in
Oh.
Spanish, the audio. So I'm not sure if everyone heard it in Spanish or not.
Okay. Were you able to hear it, Leticia, when I was playing it?
I was.
Okay.
I was also hearing it.
Okay.
And Miriam Washington said that she was hearing it.
Okay.
Our apologies for that.
Yeah, I am so sorry for the
what-
technical.
You want to just kind of talk through the essence of what you were showing in the videos?
Yeah. So what this video was kind of showing was something happening to Bing Bong that led him to feeling these sad emotions and bring up these memories that were kind of lost in his rocket ship being thrown down the mountain. And so Joy's first approach was to kind of like make Bing Bong feel happy, think of something funny, try to get him to laugh and to kind of move on from the situation so that he wasn't kind of sitting in with the sadness. And when Bing Bong was still kind of sitting with his sadness came up to him and was able to just kind of validate and hear what Bing Bong was experiencing by saying like, yeah, like this is sad. It's really hard when, you know, something that you love has been lost. And we were able to see from this interaction that actually helped Bing Bong be able to kind of move through the emotion and then to kind of go on and get on this train to their next part of their adventure. And so that did kind of speak to that first question of noticing the approach of joy versus sadness. Did anyone else notice anything about the different approaches between the two?
There's a comment in the chat that says it's harder to try and understand than pretending everything is fine and everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, sometimes with these uncomfortable feelings, it sometimes feels better to just kind of move on and think of something funny, think of something happy because we feel better when we feel good. And it doesn't necessarily address the actual emotional experiences that are currently going on, and can make it like seem uncomfortable or seem like something that we can't talk about to talk about some of those uncomfortable feelings.
There's also a comment in Spanish that says the second character's sadness showed empathy.
Yes. Yes, to really be able to kind of put herself into Bing Bong's shoes and kind of relate to maybe a time when she felt sadness herself and hearing what Bing Bong might have needed and understanding it from that point of view. And so going into the second question, have you ever experienced a time where someone was more focused on trying to make you feel happy instead of listening to what the situation was like for you? What was it like not feeling heard or understood?
So one response is frustrating and feeling
Mhm.
alone.
Yeah, definitely. It can make you feel really like isolated and alone and not heard, not understood.
When you're not heard, it can feel hurtful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It can feel like that other person isn't taking the time to hear out what your experience is like for you.
Disregarded or unimportant and
Yeah,
unimportant.
right. Yeah, because it's like the feelings that you feel and how you're responding to a situation doesn't matter. And so switching this over to the topic of anxiety and fear, the third question down here says, what would it look like to respond to your child who is feeling anxious or fear? What might you say to show that you were listening to them?
Anyone have any thoughts to in response to that question?
And so this might be something that we are able to kind of dive a little bit deeper in as we go on with the presentation. I am seeing notifications come up. Anything?
Repeat what was said, what was bothering, sit down, listen, show empathy.
Mm,
And by empathy, often what we mean is putting ourselves in the experience or shoes of the other person that we're listening to. Let's see. I understand how you're feeling. So
mhm,
acknowledging what was
mhm.
said. Some of the comments earlier reflected just simply acknowledging or responding to another person's feelings, which in essence helps them to feel that they're not alone in the
Yes,
experience. Having a shared experience reduces the stress and anxiety very often when we experience things that we don't expect or that are hurtful to us. And while we all need to learn how to manage those challenging feelings that feel aversive, um, once we know someone else understands our experience, helps us to put it to words, make sense of it, at least to the extent that we can, that dramatically reduces our physical stress and our psychological stress.
absolutely. Thank you for that, Dr. Cataldi. And I was going to also note that a lot of these responses were to just kind of reflect and acknowledge how your child or teen is feeling. And sometimes I find that in a moment of seeing your child hurt or feeling uncomfortable, we want to kind of like over explain or talk a whole lot to fill in the space. But actually just kind of reflecting back and validating what you're seeing they're feeling and what their experience is like can go a very long way versus a whole paragraph or a whole slew of words being thrown at them.
There's a comment in Spanish that says que no está solo y que yo estoy con él, que yo lo amo y yo sé cómo se siente. That he or she is not alone, that they are with them and that they are loved and that they
Yes.
can empathize on how they're feeling.
Very,
Yes.
very important.
All right. Thank you all for
Thank you.
sharing your comments. And I am going to move forward with the next slide. Don't want that. Okay. So these next few slides that I am going to be showing review how our thoughts, feelings, and actions are connected with anxiety or, again, any emotion for that matter. We have thousands of thoughts each and every day, and our thoughts affects the way that we feel and then how we act. When something happens, when there's a situation that's occurring, we form thoughts about that event that then leads to certain feelings and then leads to us responding and acting in a certain way. The way we talk to ourselves in our heads, which are examples of thoughts too, also affects how we feel and what we do. And so knowing that our thoughts, feelings, and actions are all interconnected, we can then be able to look at how changing one area, whether it's, the way that we're thinking, the perception that we have of a situation, can impact the other areas to better manage a situation that we're experiencing. So here is this connection played out. Let's say that your teen is scrolling through social media and finds something or finds some information about the recent election. This experience may lead your teen to have thoughts like, what if something bad happens to my family? What's going to happen in the next near future? This thought can then lead to them feeling anxious or scared or fearful, which may then lead them to avoiding certain places in the community, asking constant questions, or needing constant reassurance from you. And so we can kind of see how the flow of the thoughts to the feelings to then play into the actions can all connect to each other. And what we're going to do next is kind of build our awareness of what those thoughts can look like, and then being able to kind of manage when those unhelpful thoughts show up, what can we do with them to change them or to challenge them to ones that are more helpful and true. So as I was mentioning, the more we are aware of the connection between our thoughts, feelings, and actions, the more control we can have over each area. This slide is a handout, and what I'm hoping to do is to be able to make these printable or editable and to be sent out so that you all are able to have a copy of this after this webinar is over. But I'm going to review what each of these handouts kind of show and how you can utilize them on your own. So this handout helps track how your child and teen are experiencing different situations. In that top box right there, we're able to kind of note what the situation is. Is it that they have, a test that they're about to go into? Is it about that they're about to go into a soccer game or a soccer tournament? And so you're able to note what that situation is. In the first box, there is a section to help your child notice what is happening in their body. Are they becoming tense? Is their body starting to shake? Are they breathing more heavily? The next box tracks what are they saying or asking in this moment. And finally, what do they do next? So are they, kind of shutting down and hiding in the room? Are they kind of asking more questions and like presenting with a little bit more energy? We're able to kind of note the actions that your child is having to be able to kind of relate how these are all kind of impacting what they do. And so for younger kids, this is something that you can do with them and notice aloud what you are seeing and hearing. And for older kids and teens, this is a great opportunity to wonder aloud how their body is feeling, what they are thinking, and to build their awareness of how those impact what they do next. One of the things that I do like to say about these strategies is that practicing and talking about these skills when things are calm allows your child to take in the information a whole lot better, and better sets them up for when anxiety or any emotion does show up. It's more successful to be able to use them because it's something that has been talked about when they were kind of their brain was fully on, they were able to focus and they're able to have more success pulling from this skill when an overwhelming feeling shows up. And as I was mentioning before, sometimes the thoughts that we can have can be unhelpful, untrue, not based in facts, and they can be problematic. And so on this slide, there is a handout here that can allow you to help your teen and child notice the thoughts they are having and practicing ways to change those thoughts to more helpful and true ones. So as you can see in that third box under evidence, some kind of reflection questions and prompting questions can be things like, what has happened in the past? What do you know about this situation? Are there possible alternative explanations? In addition to some of these questions, some other things to consider and ask aloud are, what is the evidence that this will not happen? Are you jumping to conclusions that this is going to be something that happens? What can you actually control about the situation? And a good one that I like to ask, especially for the older kids and teens, because they are so socially relatable, is if you had a friend in this situation, what would you say to them? Being able to critically think through our thoughts can allow us to come up with more accurate thoughts that can then help us navigate and manage the situation better. And building these skills with your child and teen can help set them up for handling scary situations on their own and not allow their immediate automatic reactions and thoughts impact and control them. All right, any questions on this, the thoughts, feelings, and actions? Okay.
Nothing in the
Then
chat yet.
Okay, perfect. So then moving on to another strategy to teach and support your child's anxiety is what we call the circle of control. Sometimes anxiety can show up when there is something that is out of our control. Being able to focus on what is in your control and putting aside what is out of our control can help make a person feel empowered and feel some relief. So to go over some of this, some things that are in our control would include things like our own thoughts and actions, our own opinions and beliefs, while some things that are out of our control are how others respond to you, the future, and what other people believe. I like to give this next example because it really emphasizes the impact of what we focus on really kind of impacts how we view things. So something that I naturally just cannot control is the weather. So if I spend all afternoon trying to change the weather to be 75 degrees and sunny, which I really hope is the case because I am chilly outside right now, not only would the weather not change on my command, but I am likely to walk away feeling pretty hopeless and anxious because nothing was able to change or happen. And so one of the things that I like to do is ask a person what is in their control about a certain situation and what is out of their control. Being able to pinpoint the areas that someone is able to control is going to help them have more empowerment, have more power to be able to decide how they're going to control those aspects that they are actually able to control. I can then support them on acknowledging and accepting what is out of their control. And so again, with this strategy, I want to keep in mind that practicing and understanding this beforehand, like when things are calm, cool, and collected, allows a person to better utilize the skill in a feared or overwhelming situation. And you can even see in the visual here some of the other things that are in our control versus out of our control. All right, any questions on this or any comments? All right. So now what I'm going to talk a little bit about is how are you currently responding to your child or teen who's showing up with anxiety? Listed on this slide here are some common ways that parents can react. And as I briefly review what each of these reactions might look like and sound like, I want you to think about and reflect on which ones you find yourself responding with, and if you found them useful or successful in the past. So the first one is providing reassurance. So this may include things like physical affection or closeness, or telling your child or teen that everything will be all right, or that there's nothing to be scared of. And while there are benefits of providing your child with comfort and security, constantly having to reassure them can create a cycle of them always feeling like they need your reassurance for things. And when there is an actual excessive worry that doesn't have any base, like, saying things like, oh, I'm scared that pizzas are going to fall out of the sky, where there's no actual factual base for this, it can send the message that something is really, really awful, or something that is something to be scared of, when we're giving that reassurance for something that isn't quite something that's realistic. So in these situations, what can you do instead? The best strategy is to help your child be able to come up with answers themselves rather than expecting you to do it for them. And so kind of going back to some of those strategies before, by using some of those challenging thought questions to find those alternative perspectives and allowing them to wonder things aloud can be a great way for them to consider possible other alternatives, and to prompt them to kind of question some of the things that they might be experiencing, so that it's not something that they just take for face value. The next one is telling your child what to do. And so this can look like trying to take over, directing your child on what to do, or doing things on behalf of them. So for example, if your teen is anxious about applying for a job, to relieve some of their anxiety, a parent might take over and fill out the application for them. And oftentimes, parents step in because they feel so much for their child, and it hurts to see them hurting so much. And while, this is something that kind of maybe relieves some of your own anxiety in that situation, this response can result in your child being unable to handle a feared situation, and reduce some of their own self-confidence. I do want to note that children and teens learn best by being allowed to make their own mistakes and to have the experience that they can handle challenging situations. So some things that you can do instead of telling your child what to do is to communicate your confidence in their ability to be able to handle the situation on their own. The next is empathizing, which I know that we talked a little bit about in our Inside Out video clip. And so this kind of looks like understanding your child or teen's experience from their point of view, looks like reflecting, validating their experience. And this allows your child and teen to feel listened to, understood, and supported, which you all were pretty point on when we're talking about that Inside Out video too. being tough, this looks like being tough with your child or teen and not letting them avoid the situation. Allowing avoidance can look like removing your child or teen from the feared situation and allowing them to avoid it completely. And responding in this way can often provide immediate relief for your child and probably you, but it can send the message that the situation is really that scary and does not allow them to learn how to manage. Prompting independence. This looks like prompting your teen or child to independently decide how to cope constructively with their anxiety. And so this is different from telling them what to do because you're asking questions that allow them to solve the problem on their own and think it through for themselves. So asking questions like, so what can you do that might help? Or what can you do that would make this a little bit better? Ignoring, this one is pretty self-explanatory. It would look like ignoring the anxiety and acting like it doesn't exist. And this can make someone feel isolated and alone. And this last bullet point here is becoming impatient. It's all too easy to become frustrated when it feels like nothing you do or say seems to help. And impatience might look like becoming angry towards your child or teen or doing something you wouldn't normally do if you were calm, cool, and collected. And so reviewing some of these common strategies, there's no right or wrong way of handling your child's anxiety, and each person and family is different. There are some things that we can do, though, that can help reduce the anxiety and that will help their child or teen experience these challenging situations a little bit better in the long run. And so this slide is another handout that hopefully we'll be able to send over to all of you. And this is a handout that allows you to monitor and keep yourself accountable for how you respond to your child or teen's anxiety. You can see in the first box, this is where you can note the situation that created the anxiety for your child. And then in that second box right there is where you can jot down the parenting trap or traps from the previous slide. So some of the common reactions that we can have when responding to our child's anxiety. And so this is where you might note, did you start providing reassurance? Did you start telling them what to do? And then in that next box, there's a spot to reflect on what you could do instead of one of those traps and what you may say next the next time a similar situation happens so that you can kind of prepare and plan for what you might be able to say in a future situation. And being prepared with some of these go-to phrases or things that you would want to say can help you be able to kind of remain calm and remain with your child when those tough moments occur again. All right, before I go on, did anyone want to add into the chat any of these strategies that you have found yourself responding with in the past? Or even putting in the chat one of the strategies that you maybe would like to hope to try to utilize in the future.
Or maybe there's one that you can pick that you like here that you might go ahead and try sometime over the next week. What does everybody think? You want to try one of these over the next week?
There's some comments in the chat in Spanish saying the exercises on deep breathing and mindfulness, and also strategies offering support. Love, caring,
Reassurance,
and empathy.
Mhm.
Yeah, reassurance, empathy, becoming patient, prompting to become more independent,
Right.
empathic questions and awareness.
For sure. Thank you. And again, I'll put this out to be able to send to all of you so that you can also just jot down any notes and kind of keep yourself kind of aware and accountable for some of the strategies that you can use throughout the week. All right. So now going into tip number 2, being a positive role model. So, knowing your own anxiety triggers and responses can be a great place to start to know how you currently deal with them and what your child and teen may be taking away from you. Our kids are always paying attention to what we're doing, even when it doesn't seem like it. And so, what are some of the things, and these aren't things that you necessarily have to put in the chat, but I just want you all to be kind of like becoming aware of your own responses to anxiety and what it can look like. So, just kind of reflecting on these own answers in your head. What are some of the things that cause you anxiety? Is it work related? Is it due to parenting? Is it anticipating changes in the community? Next, how do you know you are experiencing anxiety? Do you have a fast, rapid heartbeat? Are you experiencing body pains, tension in your own body? And then what are your own reactions? Do you find yourself shutting down and keeping to yourself? Do you sometimes notice that maybe you are kind of like having an emotional like volcano where small triggers may lead to something or for you to react in a stronger way? Knowing these triggers and responses about ourselves allows us to be more aware of how others may be seeing us, and then allows us to modify our reactions and model healthy ways of coping. And so, some more reflection questions for us to kind of be able to think about. And as I mentioned, our kids and teens are often looking to us to see how we handle different situations to then gain information for themselves on how to interpret it and how to manage those associated emotions. So, again, some things to just kind of reflect on is what do you do to manage your own anxieties and fears? Do you hold on to your emotions and avoid talking about them? Do you compensate and say everything's fine when it's not? Do you find someone to talk to and engage with to be able to help you work through it? Being open to sharing your own thoughts and feelings about various topics and emotions, demonstrating healthy coping skills, and asking curious questions about topics and emotions can open the door for conversations with your child to show them ways to manage. And so moving into tip number 3, I did want to see if there's any comments or questions about tip number 2 about being a positive role model and how we can show up to be able to not only model healthy coping skills, but also kind of show how a person is able to manage and deal with their own anxieties.
I do see a comment in Spanish about feeling nervous. Although there's no additional information or comment, um, and want to just ask the person whose name is not listed if you'd like to say more. And maybe Leticia can translate it for us and we can respond. Nervousness is a common word that people use to describe anxiety or fear, and it is very common, especially in today's times, to experience nervousness, anxiety, fear, stress, especially when things happen that are not expected to happen. And so, thank you for putting that out there for us. I see another comment in Spanish from Carlos.
The comment says, primero tenemos que estar seguros nosotros para darle seguridad a los hijos. So we ourselves as parents must first feel secure so that we can pass that feeling of security to our kids.
And that's a wonderful ideal, Carlos. And I'm going to just be 100% honest. That is, as parents and adults, sometimes we don't feel confident or we don't have the strength that we wish we had. But even in that moment, in spite of not having the feelings and thoughts that we really wish we had and that we're always striving to have, that inner strength, it's okay to still in all of it acknowledge and embrace where your significant other or your children are in that moment. And sometimes it's good to be an honest role model for our kids and simply say, you know what, gosh, I'm not really sure right now either, or I'm kind of scared too. And we're all human. We all have feelings and thoughts, and frankly, it's important for really to go back to that place where our children don't feel alone and they know that their parents can both recognize and honestly acknowledge what they're feeling in the circumstances that they're experiencing. It looked like you were having some thoughts there, Michelle, about that.
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing with that, and that being able to show through your own experiences and your own ways of responding, like, oh, wow, maybe I didn't handle this like the best way that I would want to, can be a wonderful learning opportunity to be able to like show that we can also ourselves change how we respond to things to better help us moving forward. And so I was just kind of like picking that up from what you were saying, that we aren't also expected to be perfect because that's not realistic. And so kind of giving yourself some of that grace too, to be able to, make your mistakes on your own too, to then be able to talk it out with your child and teen, to show them that that is also another healthy way of coping with changes and mistakes being made.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
All
Any
right.
other
Yeah.
I'm
Anything?
sorry, any
No,
other
I was going to say the
comments
same thing.
or reactions that questions that you have? This is a lot of information. Um, and just want to pause here for a moment,
Mhm.
just to see if there are more thoughts or reactions or ideas that you'd like to share. And as a community, all of us here right now, there's a lot of us on this Zoom, and we're all in different places, and yet we are a community and we are supporting each other through the circumstances and all the various events that we're all living through right now. And something as simple as coming together in community like this, even though I'm sure many of you I have met over time and over the years, I'm sure you all know Leticia, you might know Michelle. We're all one big community, and as they say, it takes a village. Other final thoughts, comments, anything you'd like to comment on, or we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, and if you think of it, go ahead and put it into the chat.
Yes, also no harm in going backwards either. So if a thought or a question pops up in your head, even if we moved on, please add it to the chat so that we can kind of share that thought out loud and talk it through too.
There is a Spanish comment in the chat. En mi familia tengo un dicho, hay que hacer lo que hay que hacer. We have to do what we have to do.
For sure. Yes. And,
So
sometimes,
true.
yeah, I was going to say sometimes we're using what we have in that moment. And, with all of these things in mind too, like these are just some tools to be able to have in your back pocket to assist in those times of need too. Okay, so going into tip number 3, promoting good self-care. Self-care can help reduce stress, enhance emotional well-being, and build resilience. And often implementing good self-care can be put on the back burner given all the things that we have to do in any given day. So I've listed some things that can help promote some good self-care for your child and teen. And I also want you to be able to think about some of these things for yourself as well. So establishing good, consistent routines, which is going to include good sleep routine, good, school routine of waking up in the morning. Avoiding too much caffeine and eating a well-balanced diet that's going to be able to help kind of manage some of that, unnecessary jitters, and being able to get some of that healthy, good foods into our system. Exercising, and I'm not asking or having this be like running 2 miles every day, but can be any activity that your child or teen finds enjoyable. And oftentimes there are community clubs or organizations that kind of fit with some of those interests. And so kind of looking into some of those to be able to kind of one, connect your child or teen to people with similar interests, but then also to be able to kind of get them out and moving their body. Creating time each day to decompress. So this can look like having time for no screens and not having any demands placed on them for like maybe 30 minutes after they come home from school. And this can really just kind of like let that big breath be taken off from a day that they had, and let them just kind of like catch up with everything that's been going on. Encouraging connection with trusted and healthy friends and family, writing in a journal, enjoying a craft, participating in a hobby that they enjoy. And this last bullet point is something that I find as a fan favorite for myself, is to implement rewards for a job well done. And I don't want to confuse this with a setup like if you go to school, you'll get $20 because that's not realistic long term and it's not going to really create any intrinsic motivation. But it's kind of like as adults, we may reward ourselves by giving ourselves a like well-earned break after accomplishing something. Or for myself, something that I've been doing recently is that I will like take a moment and like look through a pile of pictures that I have sitting next to my desk. And I like always look forward to looking at this like pile of pictures that I have because it not only like makes me laugh, but it puts a smile on my face whenever I think that I can end my day with that. And so here are some ways to encourage some self-care at home. So practice relaxation strategies like yoga, meditation, guided imagery, or visualizations. And visualizations can look like having your child or teen imagine their favorite place or their happy place. So sometimes when I ask kids to do this during my time with them, they often like imagine like going to an amusement park or going to a specific family member's home. You can also prompt them to think of a specific memory or situation that makes them feel calm, secure, and content. And so the perks of being able to like use those visualizations is to be able to like kind of put them in a place that makes them feel good and makes them feel calm, which can then help them be able to kind of manage the feelings that they're experiencing to handle and tolerate whatever it is that they're going through. And one of the perks of our electronics is that there is a world of online apps that can help with some of these skills. So I've listed some of them here that have been fan favorites from people that I've worked with and from myself being able to use them. So the Calm app and Headspace app are popular apps that have guided meditation and some breath work. The Insight Timer app is a meditation app that targets sleep and stress. The Virtual Hope Box app is a tool that offers relaxation, distraction strategies, and positive thinking tools. And then for younger kids, the Cosmic Kids Yoga has an app and a YouTube channel that offers guided yoga and mindfulness exercises. And so I have used each of them myself from time to time. And I do really like the Calm app, especially when I just like have a lot of thoughts floating in my head. It's something that kind of just like helps ground me and like focuses on, whatever it is that the, meditation or, the deep breathing is asking me to do. And then I do enjoy also the Cosmic Kids Yoga channel because it's just a fun way to be able to kind of like do some of those stretches and to kind of think about how your breathing is showing up for you. Has anyone used any of these apps and want to share their experience with it?
I just listed another one in the chat called Saluna, which is available for free online on the internet.
Yes.
And then Paige just shared that she has used yoga.
Yes, yoga is a great one. And it really like does something to be able to like connect yourself with your body.
And then Alicia is saying that she and her daughter use the Calm app.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Roku is another one that Paige is referencing that is good for kids before school.
Oh, cool. I'll have to jot that one down for myself to check out.
Thank
I
you,
love,
Leticia. I had the same thought. Okay, please keep your ideas coming in the chat, and I'm gonna stop talking now, Michelle, so you can keep going.
all right, sounds good. Thank you. All right, so this slide right here has a great grounding technique that I love because you don't need any supplies. You can use it anywhere you are, from being in the office, from being at school, being in the car, whatever, wherever you may be. And it's called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique for grounding. And it uses your 5 senses to help kind of ground yourself to the present moment. And so through this grounding technique, what you're going to do is to start by noticing 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste or something that you like the taste of. And using grounding is a great way because often being able to turn our attention towards something that is right in front of us can help regulate the body and become more attuned to what we might need. And so for this one, something that I actually like to do with this one is I like put it in like certain areas. So like I have the poster like hanging up on my wall. I also have this poster hanging on my fridge. And it's something that even just seeing this visual helps prompt me to do it right away. And something about it just kind of resets my system and kind of just like gets me in tuned and like, I don't know, a sigh of relief after I complete it. And so this one, for at least my personal self, is something that helps. Dr. Cataldi, did you have your hand up?
Actually, I was meaning to react. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
think that's such a great little slide. I love that, and I love your examples.
Yeah, thank you. All right, and again, I think that this can be a great one for to be able to send out to be printed as well. So we'll figure that out so that you all can have a copy of this too. Okay, so we talked a little bit about creating self-care and you know, promoting that for our kids and our teens. And so flipping the switch to be able to talk about our own self-care. So I have a rating scale on this slide right here, and I want you all to take a moment to review each of these areas and rate yourself in each area. And so we can kind of look at a 1 being like, I need a lot of help with this. This is not something I'm doing right now. And a 5 being like, yeah, I feel pretty good about this area. Like I'm doing this pretty much every single day, and it's something that I feel confident in. And what I want to note here is that when we're able to take care of ourselves, we are in a much better space to be able to take care of others. And it's really the same concept for the message that you hear in an airplane, that you need to put on your oxygen mask before putting the oxygen mask on people around you. And so I want you to kind of take a moment to be able to kind of note the areas that might need improvement, and to think about a plan to help you increase these areas throughout your day. So, for example, if it's like that drinking enough water, if you're kind of putting yourself at a number 2, like you're not feeling like you're drinking enough water, what's your plan? Is it going to be to set, alarm reminders on your phone to take a sip of water? Is it to be able to like have a water bottle to carry around with you all day? What is that plan to be able to kind of improve and increase some of these areas that kind of connect us with taking care of ourselves? And one of the things that I'm going to do with this one too is hopefully be able to send it out, and for you all to be able to like have this copy with you throughout the week and kind of jot down and note how you're doing in each of these areas, as well as to modify some of these areas too, because some of these areas might not be relevant to you. And so just kind of keeping this for yourself to keep yourself accountable, and kind of being able to, again, take care of yourself, because often it's something that we kind of just move forward and move past, saying like, oh no, like I'm okay, I'll be okay. But when we actually do these self-care things, it's something that we can actually see a significant impact on ourselves and how we're feeling. All right. Any questions about this? Because then we're going to be getting into tip number 4. And at least for myself, looking at this self-care rating scale, I am actively working on not looking at my screen before bedtime. I find myself falling into that quite often. And I notice that like when I don't do it, my brain isn't as like on and as thinking too much. And so that's something that I'm currently working on to be able to improve and get better at.
That's outstanding modeling right there. No questions at this point in the chat.
Okay, sounds
Actually,
good.
Gabby says that she is trying not to look at her screen either before bed.
Yes. It's something that like it feels like so like habitual, and yeah, it takes like active thought to be able to switch that out, and read a book, or talk to my dog before bed. Okay, so now speaking of these phones, we're gonna move into social media, and the role of social media, and how we can kind of encourage healthy social media use, so that it doesn't kind of just weigh down on us and overpower us. So I want to start off by sharing a couple of tidbits about what social media and how social media impacts us. So as we all know, we're living in an electronic world. There was a study done in 2023 that showed that out of 6,643 parents living with children between the ages of 3 and 19, it was estimated that US teens spend an average of 4.8 hours per day on social media. And while there are some benefits of social media, like being able to connect with others or staying in touch with people who are not physically nearby, heavy social media use has a strong link to heightened anxiety and feelings of isolation and depression. And speaking before about those thoughts, feelings, and actions and how they're all connected, receiving social media notifications all day long can influence our thoughts and feelings. not only about the person who's receiving those notifications, but how that person is viewing the world, which, as we know, then affects what they do and how they respond. And so what can we do with the ubiquitous social media that seems to be everywhere? We can model and encourage healthy social media usage. And so monitoring and limiting your child's social media use and setting a good example by limiting your own screen time and involvement with social media is something that's going to be really helpful. And talking a little bit about before how we can model how we experience and how we work through our emotions, we can also model and show how we can have a healthy relationship with social media too. And so as I was mentioning before, I fall into this trap of like grabbing my phone immediately the first moment I wake up, or like grabbing my phone in the middle of the day and just like mindlessly scrolling through whatever it is that's popping up on my screen. And so when we're finding ourselves doing it, we're noticing like, how much information we're taking in, and, all the information that is out there, either in, social media or just kind of like being shared in text messages or chats or things like that. And so modeling and creating new routines to replace the use of electronics, like encouraging in-person socialization, exercising, and offline interests. So, being able to like add things to the schedule that don't involve phones or don't involve screens, to be able to fill up some of that time without having the screen in our faces. One of the other ways to encourage healthy social media use is to talk to your child about underlying issues that may arise because of social media. And so problems with social media can often mask deeper issues. So, is your child having problems fitting in at school? Are they experiencing issues with peer interactions? Asking some of these curious questions to get to the root of what may be going on can be helpful to understanding, why social media may be so heavily gravitated towards. We can also implement social media breaks and setting aside whole family time without screens. This can look like, going for a family walk outside. It can look like setting limits to have no phones while you're eating a meal, or even playing a board game together. And while I know that tearing a child or teen away from a screen is not an easy task and may cause some tension, limiting screen time can be a new habit that is formed through positive alternative experiences. And so, also one of the things to kind of keep in mind and keep the conversation open about is reminding your child that the images that they see on social media are not an accurate representation of real life. So oftentimes we see things because that's what people want us to see. And so having those open conversations that we can't just take what we see on social media for face value, but having those conversations of what it could mean, or what are some other alternative perspectives. A good one that I do like to note is limiting news intake. So there is a lot of information shared both on social media and just kind of on news outlets that are, on YouTube or in articles. And so being able to limit our news intake, because it can be very overwhelming and hard to digest. So, as we're thinking about this, encouraging this critical thinking about information that they do take in from the news, as not all information that they hear or read about is true and based in fact. And so this can sound like, whenever I hear something that I'm not exactly sure of, I always want to seek out some reliable source to help me understand what is really going on. Can we work together to figure out what some of those reliable sources can be? So you're also kind of like joining in with them and meeting them where they're at for maybe something that they're interested in, but also exploring this so that they aren't just kind of taking everything and anything that they hear, but also critically thinking about it so that they can kind of form their own opinions and beliefs about what is going on around them. All right, any questions about social media? Was anyone surprised by the 4.8 hours per day?
No comments.
All right.
Actually, Alicia just shared that she was not at all surprised. And I'll just
I
say
was,
I was not either.
yeah, I know. I saw it and it's still like a stark number, but then I'm also just like, no, that sounds pretty accurate. That sounds pretty accurate. Okay, so we're coming into the wrap up of this webinar, and I do want to make sure that there's any time for any questions at the end. So I'm going to slide into what this slide is talking about here. So often building our own toolkits as well as our child's can be sufficient to navigate the normal anxieties and fears of life. But I did want to put a slide in here for if there is a need for additional support. So here are a couple of resources to kind of have in your back pocket or just to kind of have for your reference in the future. So 211 is a comprehensive and free of charge database of local health and social services. You can access it through the 211 website or by calling that number. Bright Life Kids is a free virtual coaching service for kids ages 0 to 12 who live in California. And the website is listed on this screen right here. As Dr. Catalde had mentioned a couple slides before, the Soluna app is a free mental health app for ages 13 to 25 in California that offers services like one-on-one coaching, digital journals, mood logs, and peer connection. And you can also reach out to your child's school counselor or principal seeking additional support, and they can be referred to the school's care team. I also have listed down below for situations of crisis or high-risk situations, 911, 988, or A3, which stands for anyone, anywhere, anytime, and provides timely and appropriate mental and behavioral health crisis services. All right, so I'm going to give a moment to jot down any of these resources. All right, and then we have some upcoming events for you all to save in your calendars. We are hoping to have a Addressing Anxiety and Fears Part 2. The date and time is still to be determined, so stay on the lookout for any updates on that event. On January 25th, there will be an immigration forum through Stand Together Contra Costa hosted at Willow Cove Elementary. And for more information, you can go to that website listed on this slide.
So there's one question in the chat about 988. And that is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, often referred to as the National Lifeline. And Contra Costa County calls and often Alameda calls are go to our county crisis center, which you can also reach at 211. It's a phenomenal, just really, truly amazing resource for the community. And 988 is on the backside of your child's student ID badge as well. And as Michelle mentioned, the 211 number is really a fantastic resource. They have a great website. Contra Costa Crisis Center is the website, and you name it in the way of resources in our county, and they can give you a contact for that. Anyone, anytime, anywhere is the A3 Crisis Response Service. They have really a beautiful website. It's relatively new to Contra Costa County, and that can be accessed by anyone, anywhere, anytime, if you need assistance. Additional questions? And thank you, Leticia, for putting the English and Spanish slides in the chat for anyone. Please feel free to download those slides and refer back to them as you would like. And Diana is saying to you, Michelle, thank you so much. And to you, Leticia, and to you, Gabby. And we thank you, Diana. We couldn't do
Yes.
this work without you. It's a partnership, and we truly appreciate each and every one of you for joining us this evening. And we're here for you. And let us know that you're thinking about us, and drop us an email or come up to us and say hi when you see us at your child's school site. And we're still here for a couple more minutes, so if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat.
I also put additional flyers in the chat as so that you can download them, but we have several different parent series starting in the second semester in January, and some starting in February. We have one with the FEET organization that is specifically addressing anxiety. We offered it last semester in English. This semester, we're offering it in Spanish. So if you have a student that has experiencing high levels of anxiety, this series is 6 weeks long, and each week you will learn new strategies to help your child manage their anxiety. So if that's something that you're interested in, the flyer will be coming soon via Parent Square, and I did place it in the chat, and I'll place the registration link there in the chat as well. If we can get enough parents to, if we have enough interest in English as well, I'd be happy to open up an English cohort in the second semester. So I'll put the registration link in there, and if you're interested, please feel free to fill it out.
Michelle, any final thoughts?
Thank you all for joining us tonight. And yes, as Dr. Catali was saying, if you see me at your child's school, please feel free to come up. I'd love to chat more, and please send any questions your way to me as well. And I would love to chat either through here or offline.
And happy holidays to you too, Miriam. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening, and we wish you all a fantastic evening and a very safe holiday season, and the best to your entire family.